call the Avon Town Council meeting of January 23rd to order, and everyone please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Julie, would you take roll call, please?
Robert Pope.
Present.
Bill Holland.
Present.
Jason Puckett.
Present.
Don Loudon.
Present.
Greg Zuzan.
Present.
Okay, next is the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or questions? If not, could we get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda to include the check register, the work session memoranda, and approval of minutes for the January 9th, 2025 meeting as presented.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Julie, roll call, please.
Greg Zuzan.
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Bill Holland.
4.
Jason Puckett.
4.
Don Loudon.
4. Next is the first public comment opportunity. The public may comment on items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. If you do want to come forward, please turn on the microphone, I guess would be the first step. State your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes to speak.
The microphone is very low, we can't hear you.
This is the first of 2 public comment sessions. You're welcome to come forward and speak as long as it is, you may comment on items that are on the agenda but not part of a public hearing and or under any specific jurisdiction of the council. If you do come forward, you would want to press the green button on the microphone and then state your name and your address. And that the time is limited to 3 minutes. With no one coming forward, we'll close the first of 2 public comment sessions and move on to council comment and liaison reports. Bill?
I have nothing at this time.
Greg?
I attended the Washington Township Fire Station groundbreaking, the Comp Plan Steering Committee, and the Economic Development Board meeting.
Thank you. Jason?
Nothing new for me tonight.
Robert?
Yeah, last Monday, the school board elected new officers and received their annual financial update. And this past Saturday morning, I attended our police hiring process to welcome the more than 80 applicants who passed the first test, showing up in poor weather, mind you, and we had almost triple the number of applicants show up compared to last year's. So good news. That's it.
Good news. I attended the comp plan meeting, and that's all I've got to report right now. Next on the agenda is new business. First up, the financial consulting agreements. Brian, are you going to speak to those?
Yeah, I'll introduce these. You actually have 2 financial consulting agreements in front of you. As you guys are aware, Financial Solutions Group provides these on-call services for us. The first one is for Financial Solutions Group to assist us with the town budget, sustainability analysis 1782, which is a fancy name for our budget. TIF neutralization, which is something we have to do for the county on our TIF districts, and then just other general consulting services. It is a professional service agreement. Greg has served as our financial advisor, him and his team, really since the existence of the town. So Greg does a wonderful job for us. So we would recommend that you guys approve that agreement. The second one you have is the continuing disclosures agreement. We're required to do those as a result of our bond. And so Greg prepares those as well. He's the one who helps us sell our bonds. And so Julie does reports to him on a quarterly basis, and then they complete those continuing disclosures. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but we would recommend you approve both of those agreements.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I have a question.
Okay.
Because we do not bid this out or get quotes on this, I don't see why we need to pay mileage and copy costs and mailing costs and things like that go with this. I don't know what that costs. It may be a negligible number, but still, if we're not going to bid this out and get quotes, it's pretty much giving them what they want.
Greg, we're happy to strike those. Julie, I don't recall ever seeing them ever bill for mileage or any of that stuff. It may just be in their standard agreement, but I don't think I've ever seen it. But I know you guys dislike those, so if you want to strike them, I think that's fine.
Would anyone like to make a motion with those items struck from the agreements?
Stricken. I'll second.
I make a motion to approve the financial consultant agreements. The one regarding proposal for general financial consulting, sustainability, revenue, spending plan, CIP, TIF, and the budget as presented with items, mileage, copies, and mailings stricken from the agreement.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Julie, roll call, please.
Craig Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Don Loudon,
4. Next is the agreement for the life cycle modeling. Ryan, are you speaking to that as well?
Yeah, I'll introduce it. Steve's here as well, and he can kind of help me walk through it. I know this is a little bit of a new service, so I'm going to try to describe it in a way I think you guys are relatively familiar with our Good Roads Good maintenance and kind of how we have monitored, and we use Paiser ratings to kind of rank our roads, which then drives our decisions. And the council has been really good at allowing us to make decisions based on how we maintain roads based on those Paiser ratings. And so the best way I can kind of describe it is this life cycle modeling is going to take what we currently do is our existing data backwards to really back to 1999 when we first became a town and took over our roads. We started collecting that data. Well, that just tells us what the historical information is. And in the past, you guys have asked, well, what's the right amount to fund for our roads to make sure our roads stay in a certain condition? And that's exactly what this life cycle model will do. It'll create a deterioration curve, which is how fast the roads deteriorate, and it will project it forward and say, based on the methodologies that you guys use, so the road maintenance we do, paving, patching, our preservative seals, our crack sealing, if you apply those remedies and you invest a certain amount of money, what can you project your road conditions will be in the future? So it's basically taking that, projecting it forward. And it can tell you then, if you're spending $1 million a year, this is what your roads will look like in 10 years and 20 years. And so we can actually see, are we investing enough money in our maintenance and preservation of our roads, or are we investing even too much? It could say that you could actually invest less and you could still keep your roads in a good condition. But you guys have always asked, every time we go through the budget process, like, are we spending enough money? Is this good enough? Is it not? This life cycle model will help us answer those questions. It'll have lots of things it can do. It'll be helpful to Steve as well in dictating and determining what maintenance methods we use and when we use them based on conditions of the roads. So again, I know it's a significant amount of money, but in terms of, I mean, we're spending millions of dollars on roads. So just this small amount of money to help the council make better decisions. The reason I had it so early in the year is we want this to be done based on their schedule. So when we get to the budget process, that we can share this information with you guys, and that can be a part of that discussion. Did I do a good job, Steve, or is there anything you want to add?
You did. No, it just helps us with what we've always tried to do, is get the lowest annualized cost of our roads per mile. And one of the things that lets us do that we can't currently do with what we have is a lot of what if scenarios. What if we did a structural overlay versus a thin overlay? What if we, put a Band-Aid on versus, major surgery, that kind of thing. You invest this amount of money, it's going to get us X amount of years. This is going to get us even more years. Does it make sense to do the more, or does the lesser amount actually work better over time? So it helps us do a lot of what ifs. So we're going to do a better job of, using the money the most efficient and effective way.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I got a question. So the scope of this agreement is just lasts this year, but I feel like this is something that, 5, 10, 30 years from now, we're going to want to know this information and kind of project, is this, we're just sort of trying it this year, see if this is what we're looking for, and then this may become an annual thing for us.
Exactly. So there's actually two components to the contract. The first one is actually building the model. And then the second component is for us to actually have access to the software on an annual basis. And so that's a 1-year subscription. So then if we like it, then we would put it in next year's budget going forward. And so that we can continue to do that. But the upfront cost of actually creating the model is actually the bigger chunk of it. And so, but yes, that would be the hope if we like it, that we would continue to use it into the future.
I think the ultimate bottom line question is, do you think we're going to save $17,000-ish per?
Easy.
Good deal. Thanks. That's all I got.
Any other questions?
This is not a local company. Do we have any experience, anything about this company? Have we checked references, or does anybody else around here use them?
Nobody around here uses them. I know there's some other communities. I think we'll actually be the first people in the state of Indiana. I know I was on a call with Plainfield was on there, and there were several other Indiana municipalities. I don't know if any of them have adopted it yet. The company's out of North Carolina, and they do a lot of work, and they've created this model. And so I'm not aware of anybody locally who's doing modeling like this. And so again, I think this is a little bit out on the cutting edge. They are trying to sell it to other communities as well. So again, we've wanted to be on the cutting edge of road maintenance, and we've kind of always been there. And I think it's paid off for our residents. So I'd like to kind of continue to be there. Steve, if you know any more about them.
Well, the owners of the company were like in the American Public Works Association, the asset managers there. So these guys are nationwide gurus. They're not just the local guys from North Carolina or wherever they are. They have nationwide experience with this. And so it's all types of pavement with all types of weather. And they've developed this program to suit everybody's needs. So we're on the leading edge of it, which is why I think that, we're getting a pretty good deal with the startup cost.
Does AIM have anything to say about this company?
No, I don't think so.
So are we going to check out references anyhow, just to be safe then, seeing no one has used them before?
We can, sure.
And then the dollar amount in your comments in your agenda don't match the dollar amounts on page 4.
Correct. So actually, the dollar amounts that I used were 2024 rates. And because we were proposed to have done this in 2024, but we waited till 2025. It just didn't work out. And so they slightly adjusted their rates based on their 2025 rates, which is why it's slightly different than what I had said in my memo.
And then my last question is the $17,072 rate is only for 11 months. Is this an annual invoice or 11-month invoice?
This is for 11 months because they don't expect to actually have the model done in the first month. So there's no reason for us to need the software for a month. So yes, the $17,000 is for 11 months, but then I would expect it going forward, it would be about that same cost for a 12-month rolling forward.
Yeah, calendar year.
Calendar year,
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
I just have one more because Greg asked some of them that I had. So the model development says that they expect to have it done between 4 and 6 weeks, but there's some things that could occur that might stretch that out. Do you anticipate?
It's hard to anticipate. I mean, we're going to give them all the information that we have. We've collected data for a lot of years. They may ask for something where we may have to, we're actually getting ready to go out and rate all of our roads all over again right now for our next 5-year plan. So they may want that more up-to-date information. And so they may have to wait for us to finish that before they can complete their model. So it won't be on them. It'll probably be on us, on our end.
My last question or comment is then when you showed us a copy of the budget, this expense is lumped into a miscellaneous expense item. When you did the budget, how much did you allocate towards this life cycle modeling?
$29,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I move we accept the agreement for the life cycle modeling as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Julie, roll call, please.
Don Loudon,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4.
Thank you. Next is Resolution 2025-03, which is the fiscal plan for Bloom Phase 2.
Yeah, as you guys are aware, every time we do an annexation, we are required by law to prepare a fiscal plan, which is the impact as a result of the annexation and also how the town is going to provide services to the annexation area. This will look familiar to you guys because we did Bloom Phase 1 at the end of last year. And so this is Bloom Phase 2. Again, I think the fiscal plan is pretty straightforward, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-03, the fiscal plan Bloom Phase 2 as presented.
Second.
Julie, we have a first and a second. Would you take roll call, please?
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Don Loudon.
4. Next is the final reading for ordinance 2025-02, Wind Farms PUD amendment. It's an amendment PUD-A 24-02. Linda, you're going to speak to that?
Thank you, council. This amendment's been on file for a while. It was filed originally in May, and it should look familiar to you. It was at a work session that you saw the initial plans for it. I provided the staff report to it that I'll be referring to. If you want to skip to page 6 in the staff report that has this map in it. This is the original wind farm PUD that was adopted by the county in 2004. If you cut a line through the middle of it here, north of this line is Brownsburg, and then from here south is Avon. The area we're speaking about is in red. The area originally was proposed for commercial development is outlined in black. You can see it was a large commercial development to serve the overall PUD. Then in 2006, the area in black was amended, except for the area in red, but the area outlined in black was amended to change the use of that area for residential. And at the time, it was said that no commercial development would go there, so they wanted to do no commercial development could go there, so they wanted to change it to residential, but they would keep this corner piece for commercial. Since then, it has still remained undeveloped. The text amendment we have before us today is to add upper level residential as a permitted use on this corner property, to do a mixed use building with retail, commercial on the first floor and apartments above. The original text, I didn't include one page of it, but the last page of the staff report, you'll see the uses that are currently permitted on the site, which does include some uses that we would be concerned about, like gas stations and drive-through restaurants. But further in that PUD listed, as by special exception, you could have mixed use, and it just used the term mixed use, did not define it well. In the staff report, I did give you the definition of mixed use, which just means two different uses. They wanted a zoning administrator determination that it was permitted in the PUD. I was uncomfortable making that determination because there was no residential permitted in this particular area. So they have now filed a petition to amend the PUD to add upper story residential to this corner piece. It went to the Plan Commission in November 25th. The commission heard a lot of testimony. There was remonstrance there. The concerns, I believe, that the commission had that were unanswered, that wouldn't lead them to an approval recommendation, was there was no answer on the number of units they were proposing, the number of stories, and if they could get the connection to Northfield Drive through the north side of the development onto Northfield, which is controlled by Brownsburg. The petitioner is here tonight and does have answers to those questions for you and has a presentation prepared for you. In our staff report, we believe that with the commercial uses that are already permitted there, that the addition of apartments above that would be an acceptable change to this PUD, and that we were recommending approval. Again, the commission voted an unfavorable recommendation on a vote of 4-2. The beginning of the bottom of the first page and continuing on to the second page, I listed some uses that staff believe should be stricken from the list of uses that are currently permitted there. And the petitioner has agreed to those, except I did strike number 2 just because it goes with number 1, a gas station convenience store. So at the Plan Commission, we agreed to strike number 2, and that is taken out of the ordinance that I corrected today. So I know it's a confusing site, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. It's not a rezoning per se, and there's not the 5 criteria to go through that you typically have on a rezoning.
I have a question. So you're saying that petitioner now has answers to the number of stories and the number of units?
Correct. And the connection to Northfield Drive. Because it's shown on the site plan, but there was not clarity whether or not it was, Brownsburg would let it happen. And so he has the answer to that, which is yes, Brownsburg will permit that connection.
Any other questions for staff before we call up the petitioner? Thanks, Linda.
Hello, my name is Mark Riffle. I'm here on behalf of the petitioner. I'm with Taft Law, which is located at 1 Indiana Square, Pennsylvania Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. I appreciate the council giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight. I have a quick presentation for the council just so you guys have some better visual cues and visual information on the site generally. So if I can get this to work.
You'll need to point it over.
Okay. Put it over there. I'm trying.
Is it on? Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah. You may need to move. If you can just go to the next slide.
All right.
That'll work. I'll let you know. No, you're fine. So this is an overview of the site. Along here on the west, you have Dan Jones. To the north, you have Northfield Drive, and this is the approximate location of the site. You can go to the next slide. So as mentioned previously, our site is currently part of Area G under the current PUD. As Linda mentioned previously, areas surrounding Area G have been developed as single family. There's also some townhomes that are located to the north of our site. So while initially the area was intended to be a commercial node, the history of the site and just history of the location has kind of turned out a little bit differently. It's been more developed as a residential area. There is some commercial located at that intersection of Dan Jones and Northfield.
There's a gas station, a liquor store, as well as some storage units that are located at that intersection, but the area surrounding it is mostly single family. You can go to the next slide. So as was mentioned previously, there's a bevy of current commercial permitted uses within this area. Gas stations, convenience stores, daycares, healthcare, hospitals. You can go to the next slide. Nursing homes, medical dental labs, professional offices, restaurants, including fast food with drive-throughs, retail. You can go to the next slide. Shopping centers, vet clinics, vet hospitals, wholesale businesses. So as you can see, the current permitted uses under the PUD are quite broad. And as mentioned previously, the petitioner would be willing to limit some of these potential uses for the granting of our application. You can go to the next slide. So as mentioned previously, the petitioner is asking for the PUD to be amended to allow for a permitted use of mixed use that includes multifamily and commercial. As mentioned previously, there are several of the current permitted uses that the petitioner would be willing to strike from the PUD and remove from the PUD as it applies to our site. As mentioned previously, that includes gas stations, restaurants with fast food services, hospitals, and wholesale businesses. You can go to the next slide. Nearby, there are multiple, within, 2 miles of this site, actually less than that, 1 mile of this site. There's senior apartments. There's some other, commercial apartments, all within close proximity of this site. You can go to the next slide. This is we have kind of 2 preliminary proposed plans. My client hasn't generated a full set of plans given that the planned use isn't permitted at this point in time, so they haven't incurred the cost in generating a full set of engineering and site plans. But they have been able to generate some kind of just preliminary proposed plans. As you can see here, there are 2 access points down here to the south, as well as up here to Northfield Drive. For the council's knowledge, there is a gas easement that Marathon Petroleum owns that runs to the east and west north of our site. We've been in communication with Marathon, and they are fine with us creating this access point. Obviously, that was a long bit of negotiation, but we were able to obtain that. And then furthermore, we've secured confirmation from the town of Brownsburg that if we were to have Marathon consent to us paving over the easement, they would be willing to grant a curb cut on Northfield Drive. You can go to the next slide. This is just a different rendering. The first one had potential garages here along the border of the property. So this is just an additional rendering. You can go to the next slide. These are just preliminary artistic renderings of the site. As mentioned previously, the first floor would be a mixture of office and retail, while the upper stories would be apartments. You can go to the next slide. It's just a different rendering, just so council has an idea of what we're proposing. You can go to the next slide. Currently, the PUD for this particular area allows for a maximum height for buildings of 50 feet. At a maximum, that would allow for potentially 4 stories, likely 3. Furthermore, just based on the site and the size of the location, after talking to our engineer, they estimated that the most units that could possibly go in would be 60 to 70. And with that makeup, there'd be 10 to 20 one bedroom, 20 to 32 bedroom, and 23 bedroom apartments. You can go to the next slide. And as mentioned previously, with respect to access to Northfield Drive, we've secured confirmation from the town of Brownsburg that a curb cut would be allowed in the event Marathon allowed for our paving over the easement. This is just an example of some of my clients' other projects that they've done, similar projects here. These were townhomes that they developed in Toronto. And if you go to the next slide, just kind of some interior shots of some of those townhomes. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. Anyone have questions for the petitioner?
Do you have the agreements with Brownsburg and Marathon Gas in writing?
I have email confirmation from the town of Brownsburg that the curb cut would be allowed. And furthermore, we have already been negotiating consent to encroachments with Marathon Petroleum with respect to the gas easement.
Dan, do we need to look at that agreement as well, seeing it's in the town, any agreement with Marathon? Because we did that with one. Probably should. Yeah.
We'd be happy to provide that.
So you said you're doing 3 stores now, not 4?
3 to 4. Once again, it depends on, once we get in there and actually formally prepare the engineering plans. Obviously, we've not incurred, or my client has not incurred that cost yet. Those are expensive. They're very expensive. They also take a lot of time. And so, if we don't have confirmation that, apartments would be allowed here, our client obviously doesn't want to incur that cost.
So should we wait till we get all the information to make an informed decision? Then a what-if scenario? I mean, we had numerous petitions against it, and I'm sure some of these people are here tonight, and I was a vote against it early on. And I'd write, and because you only had one egress ingress, you may have 2 now. If we see something in writing and some agreement through the, but then again, the height of the building, the density of the building, I think there are still some things on your principal uses that could still be stricken based on your picture of what's going to go there. Some of those probably wouldn't even fit in there. So to me, I think there's still some extra work that needs to be done on this. On one vote.
Can this be sent back to the planning commission now that there are some additional information? There may be more additional information coming, or are they done? That's it.
I think we're done, right, Dan? We either say yes, no, or.
You have so many days from the Plan Commission's decision to take action, so you can continue it if you want more time to review information. In the same respect, Mr. Zuzin's questions about what commitments the petitioner wants to make tonight, this may be the only chance the case gets if you vote tonight, but you could continue it if you wanted to.
But I think my question is, with this additional information from the time the planning commission made their decision to asking us to make a decision, with that additional information, can it go back to the planning commission, or are they done?
If you are asking for additional commitments that are more strict, you can do that. If you go the other direction, then the answer might change. If you're eliminating restrictions that the Plan Commission imposed, then it might go back. But if you're asking for additional commitments that don't exist, then you have that prerogative. You, the town council, as the legislative body, you're going to make that decision.
I just didn't want to leave them out if there are differences now that they didn't hear when they voted against.
You understand?
Yeah. Okay. I agree with Greg.
I don't know who to ask this to, Ryan, the petitioner, or even Linda. Did we do traffic contribution when this PUD was created?
There was a holistic approach to all the traffic contributions, and they contributed a certain amount to each different intersection, and all of those have been paid.
Now we're asking for what I feel is a kind of a drastic change to that ultimate number. Yes?
Yes and no, maybe, because it would depend what their traffic generation is compared to what a commercial use in the property would have been. And then we would also have to take into consideration, because they'd originally contemplated a much larger commercial area that could have been, say, like a grocery store, that the residential piece that has converted now to single family homes, that may have actually resulted in a reduction of traffic. So we would have to go back and actually analyze what's proposed now versus what was originally proposed.
When this was originally created, those traffic improvement funds that were added to this, was the intent focused on that intersection of Northfield and Dan Jones?
They were really, so as you guys know, like when we do a traffic study, we require them to study like a mile in each direction. And so they made contributions to 100 North and Dan Jones. They made contributions to 200 North and Dan Jones. They made contributions to 200 and 900. And I know that they also made some contributions to Dan Jones and Northfield. There may have been some other Brownsburg contributions too, but I'm not familiar with those. So I don't know, but they made contributions to lots of different intersections that were impacted.
Fair enough. Thank
And
you.
they were of varying amounts. Some they contributed more and some they contributed less.
Thanks, Ryan.
Jason? I have a question. So you're saying 60 to 70 units, we're going to assume that maybe 2 residents in those units would be, have an automobile. And then we have the retail. This looks pretty congested for parking to me. How many numbers of spaces are being shown here?
I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. I haven't counted those, but as mentioned previously, at this preliminary stage, those are obviously hurdles. Those are all things that are going to go into the ultimate planning of the site. Parking requirements in terms of the number of units, all these various things are going to have to be considered, and they're going to have to be, brought up as we go through the development process. But it's such an early stage without, some of the expenses, just an example, full engineering drawing set that you're talking $30,000 to $40,000 worth of expenses. And so, if my client doesn't have, at least knowledge that these proposed plans may be considered due to the current PUD, then it's, an expense that is really burdensome for them and a large risk, frankly.
So they're in agreement to meet all of our development standards, landscaping, development standards,
Yes.
things like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other questions, or would someone like to make a motion on this matter?
I don't think we have enough information to make a zoning change.
So is your motion to continue?
My motion is to deny Resolution 2025-02, Wind Farms PUD Amendment, PUD-A 2402-02. I think that 2402 should be 2502 in parentheses.
2402 is the zoning case.
Okay. PUD-A 2402-02.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Julie, would you take roll call, please?
Greg Zuzen,
For.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Robert Pope,
Against.
Bill Holland,
For.
Don Loudon.
4. Okay, next is the public hearing and introduction for ordinance 2025-03, Bloom Phase 2 annexation. Ryan?
Yeah, so as you guys are aware, anytime we do an annexation, we have to advertise a public hearing and open that up for any comments that the public has to make. Again, this is the Bloom annexation Phase 2. The council's aware. This is a second phase. Bloom is it's just west of 425 and on Old US 36 or Main Street on the north side of the road. And it's proposing to be annexed into Avon. So you just need to open the public hearing.
Okay, at 7:39, we'll open public comment. Would anyone like to come forward? If so, please come up, make sure that the microphone is on, state your name and your address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Mordelon. I reside at 2135 Longford Lane in Avon. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Kevin Bordelon. I reside at 2135 Longford Lane in Avon. I'm a resident of Grand Haven at Wind Farms. I'm also a member of the HOA board there. And most of the residents here tonight are also on the HOA board, but we also have 2 residents here with maybe a little bit of input because we have a lot of questions about, number one, what this gentleman presented. A lot of lack of clarity. It came to light yesterday evening about this plan. We had never heard anything about it, and we're immediately to the east. We butt up right against the property. The actual physical address showing is what, 8186?
8186 East County Road.
Yeah, 200 North. So we butt up right against it. So we were very unclear about what this actually was. And then now that we've kind of further leaned into it and looked, it looks like, you know, obviously it's the property that's butting up on Northfield. But it also had some contradicting documents that were filed that we saw online, because immediately at looking at one of the plats, my first question is, why is that physical address on 200 North when the property is technically on Dan Jones and Northfield? That's what's throwing us off. Is that the original part of that farm? And is that why? Because the second overarching question we have is, we have pictures here. Our neighbors that live right on that property line of 81, 86 in that area, there's been a lot of dirt work and stuff that has been done, and nobody knows what's going on with it. And my neighbors here, their house is right on that property line, and next is a foundation that's being built as far as a dirt work. And it is, how tall would you say that?
At least 6 foot.
At least 6 feet, and it's directly next door to their house. So whatever they're going to be building there, we're trying to figure out what is going on, because there's been absolutely no lack. There's no transparency.
Yes.
We found about this yesterday, and that's why we're here.
Sir, if someone else from the HOA or another family member or homeowner wants to speak, we can, but we have to limit
Okay,
everyone to
fine.
3
Yep.
minutes.
No, I
So I
understand.
apologize
Nope.
for that. but-
Well, here, first of all, what they're talking about has nothing to do with what the public hearing is for.
Mhm.
They're talking about what we just turned down, the resolution for the Wind Farms PUD. This public hearing is for the Bloom Phase 2 annexation.
I apologize. I thought it was public comment. I apologize. I thought it was just full public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Later on in the meeting.
I just want to clarify the address thing. It was a leftover address from the original development, and that's the address the county had for it. And people have been confusing it with the original farmhouse, which is actually down on 200, or was it 100? 200, where they've done some dirt work, and we are aware of it, and we've been investigating it. But that is not related to this petition.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come forward on a public hearing about the Bloom annexation? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:43. And considered ordinance 2025-03 introduced. Next is the introduction of ordinance 2025-04, the ordinance authorizing bonds for the economic development bonds, Lennar.
Yes, this ordinance introduction relates to authority to issue bonds for the taxable economic development revenue bonds for the Lennar project. As you know from your experience, this ordinance establishes the parameters for approvals, which will come later. You have received a project report from the Economic Development Commission on this potential project. And as you can see on page 2, if you adopt this ordinance, you will be making several findings that will be consistent with the findings that the Economic Development Commission has made regarding this project and its benefit. And so those findings are listed in section 1. This is part of the HOPA 1 allocation area and HOPA 2. And it provides for the use of the bond proceeds for the construction of the project and funding a debt service reserve. And payment from these bonds will be through TIF revenues. If you look at page 3, you'll note that, again, this bond will require the approvals of the EDC and also the council, and consistent findings that the granting of the project and funding of it would not have an adverse competitive effect in the town. You would be asked by adopting the ordinance to confirm those findings. You would also in section 3 be approving all of the financing documents, the covenants, financing covenant agreement, the bond purchase agreement, and trust indenture. You will see those documents soon, as this is just introduction, but those are the standard documents that go along with the financing. And then you can see in section 4 the actual bond parameters, bonds not to exceed 13,465,000 and maturing not later than 25 years after the date of their issuance. On page 4, you will note that the contemplated bond structure does have an optional redemption period, and also delineates that redemption period would begin no later than 8 years after the issuance. So it's not an automatic period of redemption, and also not a no redemption, just a delayed, what they call delayed redemption. In section 5, the ordinance would authorize the president and the clerk treasurer to sign any and all documents which are necessary to be signed for the issuance, and there tend to be a lot of those documents that have to be signed. And again, on page 6, you'll simply see that the ordinance affirms that both the terms of the ordinance and the trust indenture securing the bonds will be binding agreements on the town, which is one of the reasons you're required to have this approval. This is introduction only, but this will move on to second reading, and then the bond closing is planned for this spring. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dan?
No question, Dan, but just one modification to make on page 5. The use of electronic signatures by the mayor and the clerk treasurer. Everywhere else, it looks like they put town council president.
I had noted the same thing, and it has been corrected, not in your packet, but that change was made Sunday, over the weekend. We were looking at that. Yes, good catch. That's page 5 there should be the president of the council.
Thanks, Dan.
And my only question is, we've done 2 bonds for Republic, correct? A phase 1 and a phase 2. Is this a new bond, or is this associated with one of those 2 bonds?
Neither. So we've done 1 bond so far for Republic. This is the HOPA bond. So this is actually Lennar. And so this is a separate bond, different from the Passari Republic one. If you remember, in total, we're going to end up doing 5 bonds, 2 for the Riverwalk District and 3 HOPA bonds. This is the first of the HOPA bonds.
So is Lennar building the HOPA homes to the standards that we approve for Republic?
Yes.
There's been no variances, no waivers, no anything.
No.
That's my concern.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll go ahead and consider the introduction of ordinance 2025-04 introduced. Next is legal counsel report. Dan?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is a public comment period, and same rules apply. You may comment on items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council jurisdiction. You would need to come forward, make sure the microphone's on, state your name and address, and limit comments to 3 minutes. Okay, with no one coming forward, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment and move on to council comment report. Robert, we'll start on your end. Nothing? Greg? Bill? Nothing? Okay, Ryan, council calendar.
Yes, so two things. One, your next meeting is February 13th at 7 PM. You do have a work session at 5:30 PM. And then I had mentioned this at the last meeting. I'll mention it again. And I know Don and I have talked briefly about it, but we would like to get on everyone's calendars to have a strategic session in early February. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about picking a date today, or if you want to send Don and I your availability, or how you guys want to do that. But we'd like to get that scheduled at some point.
Would that be a Saturday meeting?
That was, I think, the thought. We'd do a Saturday morning, like 9 to noon.
You said early February?
Yes.
It's really at your guys' discretion.
Since everyone has spouses, probably the 15th isn't a good day, in case they're going to be with the love of their lives.
I'd say I'd maybe suggest the 8th, if it works for everybody.
Did we have a time frame, like how long we thought this was going to be?
9 to noon.
Yeah, probably 2 to 3 hours. So again, 9 to 11 or 9 to noon. I'd say we cut it no later than noon.
I can do the 8th.
Yeah, the 8th works for me.
Bill? Greg? 8th? Okay, let's mark it down on the 8th.
Okay, we'll advertise it and send you guys meeting invites.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.